Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guest today is Julia Jessen, curator of the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. Julia, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, nice to see you. Got a couple exhibits going on
Hmm.
right now, and the first one is jury juried
Yes.
exhibit of all Iowa artists.
Yes, that's correct. So, Landscape, Climate, the Environment, and Beyond was an all Iowa open call juried exhibition. We sent the call out last fall, and really we kind of left it pretty open. We asked for work that dealt in some way with the land, which is a very broad ask, and I think it resulted in a really varied and interesting exhibition.
So, not you know not to put too fine a point on it, but
Yeah.
an art museum doesn't always do its own juried shows. I mean, it's not a new thing for Cedar Rapids Museum of Art too,
Hmm.
but it's also not something that you do every day. And this
Yeah.
is the first time you've done this here.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about that process. Gathering the jury and kind of getting everybody's heads
Yeah.
around not just putting up an exhibit, but also compete. The result of a competition.
Yeah, yeah. So in this case, I served as our jury,
Okay,
which was a daunting task, as you might imagine, but it was also great because it gave me a chance to familiarize myself with even more Iowa artists through this process. We ended up with 158 artists who submitted, and they were allowed to submit up to three pieces. So 374 submissions total. Which was a lot to go through, and a lot of really hard decisions, something that you kind of agonize over as you're making those choices. But all that I was able to fit into our exhibition was 59 pieces. So it had to come down from that 374 to the 59 that ended up in the show. Um, so it was an interesting process to go through and kind of narrow things down and think about how I envisioned the show and the different themes that I wanted to be present in the show, and make sure that I was hitting some of those different things. So, yeah.
had you done anything of this magnitude before?
No, no, I had not. I'd worked before, in different collections, pulling things
Sure.
out and doing that, which can be daunting in its own way. But this was the first time I'd ever had submissions coming in, and thinking about how they would work for the show, how they fit with the theme. So it was a really interesting process for me.
Absolute power can be scary.
Yes, I truly did kind of agonize over it. And we had so many wonderful submissions that it was a really hard choice to make. And there were so many pieces that I wished we could have included, but it just came down to a space consideration in some cases, which I think is just the nature of that kind of exhibition.
What kinds of media made it through to the
Oh,
final exhibition?
like I said, it's varied. There's a lot of different things going on. There's oils, there's acrylics, there's pastels, there's ceramic pieces. There are mixed media works where people are using recycled materials,
Oh, sure.
or incorporating natural materials into their work as well. So it's a lot of things present in the exhibition.
So the exhibit is up now.
Yes.
Do you have any programs, discussions, anything going on kind of surrounding it?
We do, absolutely. So, actually, coming up this week on Wednesday, we're going to be doing one of our Art Bites talks. And this one will be me taking our group through the exhibition, kind of doing a little curator's tour. But then for the April Art Bites, we're going to also talk about the landscape exhibition. But in that case, we're going to have five of the artists from the exhibition present. They're going to stand by their works, and we'll kind of go around from artist to artist and hear them talk about the pieces. So that should be really interesting. And at the same time, we're also doing a Zoom series of presentations with a few of the artists in the show. Just kind of a casual art chat conversation with these artists. We're doing one a month. We've already done one in February. That was with the artist Thomas Agren. And that, I believe that chat's already up on our YouTube page, so you can find it there and check that out. And our next one's coming up on March 27th with the artist Judy Bales. And those are also on Wednesdays at noon. So you can join us live on the Zoom program, or you can catch it later on YouTube.
I had a discussion with somebody else associated with a museum type organization just the other day,
Yeah.
and was talking about the new challenge and opportunities represented by, okay, how do we bring the exhibits to people who, for one reason or another, can't get often enough
Yeah.
to the museum. Yes, I go every once in a while, but I'm still interested.
Mhm.
And so here's an example of that. Is this something you anticipate moving forward with as things go? Obviously, can't do it with artists who are no longer with us, but
Sure,
putting
yeah.
these discussions up so that people can get an experience without actually setting foot into the facility.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot on Zoom actually, and recording those Zooms and putting them on our YouTube page so that they could be enjoyed. We do a series of programs called One Night Stands once a month, which are all about one work of art and one artist for one night, kind of talking about that work in the context of their broader scope of their work. And so we've been doing these. We also do a series on Grant Wood. That's more kind of quarterly, where we look at one aspect of his work and delve in on that as well. So it's definitely something that we've been doing and that I think we'll continue to do because, yeah, like you mentioned, it allows us to share our collection with more people. And in the case of the landscape show, too, it also allows more of the artists who are farther away. It allows us for us to be able to do programming with those artists who maybe aren't as local and can't come right in
Right.
and,
It's not like you have the unlimited budget to bring them in for a
Exactly.
week-long residency or something like that.
Exactly, yeah. So it lets us, keep them engaged with the exhibition and have them actually talk about their work. Always think that's so interesting and important to hear artists speak about their work. And I think you always get something more than what's in the label or even what's included in their artist statements. You always get a little more information when you're actually hearing them talk about the work itself.
There's another exhibit going on right now, and I love this because you've taken the lowly still life and given it an entirely new dimension, I think, by entitling the exhibit Ravenous.
Yes, and not just still life either. So it's Ravenous Food and Art. And it's drawn from our permanent collection, really pulled out multiple different works that include food in some way. And so, yes, the still life
Yeah, that says,
is
when
the,
I think of, that was always my bane when I was taking
yeah,
art classes
yeah,
as a kid. It was okay, draw the bowl of fruit.
yeah, absolutely. And there are some examples in this exhibition that are still lives. And I think it's a great way for people to connect with the topic because yeah, if you've taken an art class, you've probably had to do a still life at some point, and it's a great way of honing your skill and kind of figuring out how your art works in that way. But in this case, there's
Spoiler
also
alert for me, it didn't.
don't be too hard on yourself there, Dennis. But there's also works here that deal with meals too, people sitting
Mhm.
down and eating at a table. Works that are focusing on just the food itself, kind of devoid of a context around it. Some photography that's looking at harvest and kind of harvest practices in different communities. And a few works too that are dealing with a lack of food and really that idea of actually being ravenous and not having access to food. So it's a variety of things in that show as well.
Well, this is drawn from the museum's own permanent collection, and I know that I can just imagine you down there, yeah, pulling them out and going, "Oh, wow, we have this."
Uh-huh.
I'm sure that is your life. Is
That does happen pretty
yeah.
frequently. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
was there any particular piece that when you pulled it out, it just surprised you, spoke to you in a
Hmm.
certain way, or maybe just was kind of an instant, "Oh, this is going in the exhibit."
Yeah, good question. There's so many pieces in that show. One that's jumping to mind right now is actually one that I did a program on just recently for that One Night Stand series that I was mentioning. It's a photograph by Kristen Kapp called Carol with Cabbages. And it's a woman, Carol, holding cabbages as she's harvesting them. Part of this community called the Hutterites. So they practice these traditional farming practices and live in this kind of insular community similar to the Amish or the Mennonites. And so that's jumping to mind just because it's a very striking image. It's a black and white photograph with her, holding these cabbages above her head. Um, but also the context behind it is so fascinating to consider a photographer going into this community and photographing what was going on. And so that jumps out, but there are so many other pieces in the show that also have really striking stories to tell.
Current exhibits for the spring at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art are landscape and Ravenous up until May, right? So we got a few weeks left.
Yeah, so Ravenous is up until May 5th, and then Landscape is up until May 19th.
And you can take in the Art Bites conversations, but also if it doesn't work, to go down to the museum. The museum comes to you.
Absolutely, yeah. Check us out, yeah.
And so is there a link from your website to your YouTube channel, or would the easiest way be just to go to YouTube and search Cedar Rapids Museum of Art?
That's a great question. I think going to YouTube's probably the best bet, and searching Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. I know when we post anything on our YouTube page, we do also include that in our emailed newsletter that goes out to people. So there's usually a link there as well.
Yeah, so find that, and as the YouTubers say, smash that subscribe button, and then you'll get a notification whenever there's a new one. Well, Julia, it's always fun to find out what's going on at the museum. Thanks so much for coming in, and come back in a few weeks when we got new stuff up.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Dennis.
You can hear the Culture Crawl live on the radio many weekdays at 10:30, or download the podcast, watch or listen on your own schedule at kcck.org/culture, or using your favorite podcast app. Our producer is Lydia Kilgore. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.